The handsome guy on the book cover is clearly the same guy who played Sam in the last two books. Also, it looks like Nancy balanced her glass on the roof of her car. It looks a little like the time machine from Back to the Future.
Argo Funk Book Review, Argo Funk Book Review.
As we know from book 24, Nancy has an airplane pilot license. That makes her the perfect detective for today's mission: go undercover in the movie Top Gun. I'm only half joking. Nancy is going undercover as Ensign Drew, a Navy pilot in training. She's investigating the death of Jill Parker, whose plane crashed last week. The only people who know Nancy's real identity are Admiral Lewis and George. George and Nancy really should have military haircuts on the cover, but the cover artist was more interested in George's swimsuit. Nancy's housemate is Mary Chambers. She almost dies in a crash when her computer controls stop working. Mary instantly clams up when Nancy suggests foul play. Nancy and George examine the victim's plane. It's easy enough to determine someone used a time bomb to blow up the engine. The culprit's watch is still inside. Nancy decides it's a man's watch because it's wide and clunky. Nancy could easily identify the culprit now by fingerprinting the watch, but she doesn't think of that. Earlier, Nancy met a sexist guy named Crash Beauford. He said women can't fly planes. Crash returns to tell Nancy women belong in the kitchen. I'm sorry to say that Crash is Nancy's love interest in this book. Yep, she falls for the sexist jerk because he's so handsome. An involuntary thrill runs through her when she sees his smoldering eyes. When she says she won't lose her head around him, he takes it as a challenge. Crash doubles as a murder suspect. His tan lines show he switched watches recently. Crash gets into a fistfight when someone makes fun of him for coming in second place to the victim. Did Crash kill her to become Top Gun? Steve Erickson works for the company that makes military computer equipment. He jumps to the top of the suspect list when Nancy overhears him making a suspicious phone call. His computer part is responsible for Mary's near crash, and he tries to cover it up when one of his computer screens explodes. Nancy searches Crash's house. Before she can find good evidence, someone locks her in the closet. Nancy picks the lock, and she runs right into Crash. He thinks Nancy is here because she can't resist his handsomeness. He's right. She can't pull herself away as he leans in for a steamy kiss. Nancy also kissed guys in books 102 and 104. Did the publishers make it a rule that Nancy has to cheat on Ned in every other book when they switch from mystery covers to romance covers? Because that's what it feels like. The culprit cuts the fuel line on Nancy's plane. She's forced to make a dead engine landing to avoid a crash. She snoops in Erickson's office and learns he has a history of selling defective parts. George goes out on a couple of dates with a bearded computer expert named Richard Mirsky. She feels silly buying date clothing when she'll probably never see him again. Sadly, I must agree. I think Richard was only included in this book because the plot requires there be a computer expert to assist with the culprit capture. Nancy snoops in Mary's room. She learns Mary spied on her earlier. Also, Mary has a major grudge against the victim. The victim stole her high school boyfriend and married him. Nancy tries questioning Mary, but again, Mary refuses to talk. Enough mystery. Sunday is beach volleyball day. Everybody takes a long break. Nancy sees Erickson meeting a mystery man. When she tries to get close, someone knocks her out. She wakes up on a remote beach, and she's forced to walk all the way home. The culprit leaves a bomb in Nancy's locker. She learns Crash has a secret mailing address. George catches Mary snooping in the Admiral's private filing cabinets. That is highly suspicious, even though it's definitely something Nancy would do without a second thought. Mary confesses she's been secretly investigating the victim's death. Mary found suspicious papers in the victim's room. Nancy opens up a laminated page to find a hidden paper inside. It reveals Chase is one of the culprits. He's being blackmailed over his role in a college grade-changing scam. Very soon afterwards, Nancy sees the culprit's handwriting again. Richard identifies the handwriting as Bob Olsted's. Olsted works for a rival computer company. He's been sabotaging Ericsson's equipment in order to secure a military contract. Nancy breaks into Olmsted's motel room. She overhears him plot to blow up Mary's plane. Nancy rushes back to base and drives her car on the runway to prevent Mary from taking off. Nancy sees Crash. His blue eyes are so intense her heart beats faster. This is not the time for your crush on Crash, Nancy. Crash tries escaping in a plane. Nancy chases after him. He tries to kill her by crashing into her plane, but she makes a hard turn at the last second. He crashes into the ocean and has to be rescued. The end. Post-book follow-up. I like the setting for this book, enough that I'm disappointed half the book takes place off base. Then again, I saw multiple people complain it's totally unrealistic for Nancy to pose as a higher-level Navy cadet with only 1 week of study. If she spent more time on base, that flaw would have been more obvious. The book follows a formulaic structure, which is search suspect 1's room, death scene. Search suspect 2's room, death scene. Search suspect 3's room, death scene. Nancy has an instructor who shows up a fair amount. She's a typical military character who yells a lot. I couldn't tell if she was supposed to be a suspect or not. She doesn't appear to have a motive. The romance angle to this book was terrible because Chase is a sexist jerk. I don't know who thought it was a good idea for Nancy to kiss the guy who tells her women belong in the kitchen. 1930 Nancy Drew probably would have punched this jerk in the face for saying that. It's for the best that Chase's role as a suspect overshadows his role as a love interest. Still, it's surprising that there's no follow-up to the big kiss scene. Overall, it's a serviceable entry in the series, but nothing stands out much besides the terrible love interest. I'm sure I'll forget everything about this book in a week. It gets an average score from me. I give Nancy Drew Files number 106, Flying Too High, a 5 out of 10.